In 2026, artificial intelligence crossed a critical threshold, transitioning from an unregulated frontier into one of the most strictly overseen sectors of the global economy. While global spending on generative AI is tracking toward $2 trillion, that investment is now colliding with severe financial penalties actively enforced by regulators worldwide. Under the European Union's AI Act, the stakes for non-compliance are severe. The maximum penalty for the most serious violations now sits at €35 million, or 7% of a company's global annual turnover, whichever is higher. Yet an operational paradox persists. Despite these massive financial risks, nearly 60% of IT leaders are currently deploying AI models without the required governance frameworks in place. To survive this regulatory landscape, static policy documents are useless. Legal compliance and ethical oversight must be engineered directly into the machine learning pipeline. Auditable rigor is now the entry price for deployment. Every model iteration must survive the same scrutiny as a bank's financial ledger or a critical infrastructure security audit. Multinational enterprises must now navigate a tripolar regulatory map, defined by competing paradigms from the European Union, the United States, and China. The most comprehensive is the European Union AI Act. As of August 2026, the deadline for compliance regarding all high-risk systems has officially arrived. This diagram illustrates the EU's risk tier framework. Unacceptable risk strictly outlaws practices like social scoring. Below that, high-risk systems must undergo rigorous conformity assessments and be logged in a central registry. In the United States, the regulatory environment is vastly different, defined by a fierce battle between federal centralization and a fragmented patchwork of state-level laws. At the federal level, legislation like the Trump America AI Act aims to establish a single national standard to preempt state laws. It introduces a general duty of care, requiring developers to exercise reasonable care in their design and operation to prevent foreseeable harms. While Washington debates, individual states are actively enforcing their own rules. California laws like AB 2013 and the Colorado AI Act are already dictating algorithmic discrimination assessments and demanding strict training data transparency disclosures. This transatlantic friction forces multinational organizations into a corner. To stay legal across borders, they default to the EU framework as their global baseline. The third pillar is China. On January 1, 2026, China enacted amendments to its cybersecurity law, officially elevating AI ethics to national law. Unlike the West, China employs a supply chain cybersecurity model. This imposes direct, mandatory safety testing obligations on both the purchasers and vendors of AI network equipment. The amendments bring a tenfold increase in legal liabilities for noncompliance. Crucially, they expand extraterritorial application, targeting illegal data activities conducted outside China that impact its national interests. This has triggered geopolitical countermeasures. New U.S. Treasury rules now actively restrict U.S. investments in foreign entities that develop AI with potential military or surveillance applications. Hardware and supply chains are geopolitical leverage points. National security interests now dictate which neural networks can be exported and where data can reside. Many legal teams operate under a critical misconception: the assumption that AI risk is exclusively an input problem, centered around scraping copyrighted training data. That input risk is real. A copyright fair use reckoning is playing out in major courts right now, with cases like the New York Times versus OpenAI, potentially forcing developers to digitally unlearn infringing models. However, the technology has evolved from static chatbots into agentic AI. These are systems that can autonomously execute code, sign contracts, and book financial transactions. If an autonomous AI agent executes a disadvantageous contract or introduces bias, traditional agency law begins to fracture. The question of who bears fiduciary liability for a machine's hallucination remains unanswered. Courts have yet to issue definitive rulings on fully autonomous agent behavior, leaving a vacuum where developers and users battle over indemnification and financial loss. Because autonomous output risk is outpacing input risk, organizations must protect themselves with rigorous vendor indemnification clauses and continuous internal monitoring. How does an enterprise actually prove compliance with these disparate, complex global laws to an external auditor? The primary technical solution is the institutionalization of the AI Bill of Materials, or AI BOM. An AI bomb provides structural visibility into the AI supply chain. It breaks the system into horizontal planes. The data layer tracks origin to prove GDPR compliance. The model layer identifies vulnerabilities. Finally, the security layer enforces guardrails and access roles. To maintain this documentation at enterprise scale, engineering teams use the SPDX 3.0 standard, integrating machine-readable governance directly into their CI/CD pipelines. The AI bomb transforms slow legal review into an automated, verifiable engineering process. Deploying an AI bomb is just the baseline. Continuous assurance through MLOps and AgentOps is now a mandatory, ongoing operational expense. The financial burden of this compliance is heavy. Initial infrastructure audits cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, while mandatory third-party bias audits run up to $50,000 per tool per year. These costs are offset by significant efficiency gains in regulated sectors. In insurance claims processing, governed models have reduced cycle times by 65%, while sales intelligence tools have driven 45% productivity increases, turning compliance into a measurable performance driver. This has given rise to the concept of sovereign AI, a strategic push by countries and corporations to deploy AI strictly under localized laws, data, and infrastructure to ensure geopolitical independence. To achieve this at scale, multinational corporations are adopting the EU AI Act as their global baseline. This ensures their products can move freely between markets without triggering local bans. In 2026, transparency is a prerequisite for growth. Enterprises that prove their systems are auditable can move across global markets with a speed and scale that is simply closed off to those mired in regulatory uncertainty.